Absence of the chairman, the meeting will be called to order by the vice chair. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. And the board members receive their copy.
Yes.
We have a motion to approve.
I so move.
Second. So we have a motion to approve and a second. Minutes should be approved. Excuse me, the agenda should be approved. The third item is the approval of the February 10th meeting. Have the members of the board receive their copy of the minutes? Are there any corrections? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Move.
I second.
Minutes and approved. Moving on to the public forum. This time is set aside for public comments, any topics of concern to the Historical Preservation Commission. At this time, do we have anybody that would like to come forward?
Hello, thank you for
allowing me to speak a little bit. My name is Shelley Orngard. I'm at 928 Burnett, and I'm here to talk with you about an event that is kind of coming together. Several of us are working together on, and you have a handout I brought for you. Ames, A Glimpse Inside. That's just a working title to begin with. What we are imagining is something that would highlight the historical buildings and historical roots and the stories of Ames. And we feel like this would be a great way to raise the awareness of the value of the historic resources that surround us here in Ames and made up Ames. And as we were talking about it, we took some inspiration from a number of other communities around the Midwest. I put in a list there, thinking that it might be great if you could go home and search on the internet and go see these places, because they're really exciting, interesting places. Open House Chicago is part of a worldwide network of 60 places where they open maybe commercial buildings, say in Chicago, in the Tribune building. A lot of people drive on Michigan Avenue and you see the Tribune building and you say, wow, that's such a cool building. I wonder what it's like inside. With this program, Open House Chicago, you're able to actually go inside. It's not always, the Tribune building, maybe, and they have a lot of buildings there. That is organized by the Chicago Architectural Center. And then a couple others are in, there's something called Doors Open Milwaukee and Doors Open Minneapolis. And they are not part of the Open House network. They are local networks. They're run by nonprofits. The Doors Open Minneapolis is kind of interesting because it's run by an organization that it practices new preservation, which is, I'm not familiar. Is anybody else, have you ever heard of that? I'm just reading about it. That's the first time I'd heard of it. But the idea is to preserve and protect and maintain not just the individual buildings as historical gems, but neighborhoods as well. So it has a little broader perspective. And then Doors to the Past Home Tour in Sherman Hill is celebrating this year its 50th anniversary. They've been going for 50 years. And has anybody been to that? It usually takes place in September, and is a great way to see some of these older homes. That's residences, whereas Chicago is mostly commercial buildings. And the Milwaukee and Minneapolis are, I think, a bit of a mix. Sherman Hill is primarily residences. So each place kind of draws on their strengths and their interests to create what they feel would be locally a good event. It pays off in big ways, I think, in terms of, again, raising awareness, getting people interested in historic properties, historic areas, and maintaining them and protecting them and that sort of thing. And they all rely a lot on volunteers. And when you get people volunteering and engage in that way, they learn, they get excited, they participate. And so that's something that we're also thinking about too, that we'd like to draw on a volunteer base. So I think when this came up at your last commission meeting, I believe you took a vote and said, yes, you wanted to, investigate it more. And if that's something that you would like to do, I think it would be great if you could designate a specific person to be on the steering committee. Again, we're developing this and something that I think is, it's going to develop according to the people who participate in it. We've already had voiced interest from the Ames History Museum, Downtown Ames, and the Old Town Neighborhood Association. So our thought is this year, maybe in the fall, we'd have our first event, have it in the Old Town area or the commercial area, Main Street area, and then maybe next year in a different part of Ames. Maybe we go to the university, and maybe the year after we go to our new historic district over the Chautauqua district. So does anybody have any questions for me?
What do you have any idea of an anticipation of a budget?
That's something that as I say, we're at the beginning stages of that, and we're going to be meeting this week, and that's one of the things that's on the agenda to talk about. But yes, we will be needing funds. So it would be great if the commission would be able to help sponsor that, and we'll be wanting to look, of course, at other places as well.
So what time of day would this take place?
We're planning. We have ideas. We have thoughts about. We're talking about Thursday evening, or Saturday or Sunday during the day.
So if you did it Saturday during the day, could you do it in conjunction with
yes,
farmers market?
that was our thought. That was our thought, that if there's a lot of people downtown anyway, and if we have locations, open buildings downtown, it would be really easy for them to walk a block or half a block and go and visit some of them.
So your question is whether we want to be on the steering committee?
Yes.
We want to rep on the steering committee?
Yes. Yes. And so, this is public forum. I know you don't want to discuss that while I'm up here. I just thought I'd see if you wanted me to answer any other questions for you. But yes, if you would do that. I know you have a busy agenda today.
Ray, do you know if the city council or the city would give us any kind of a budget for if we get involved with this? I mean, it seems to fit in well with our mission. But do you know if-
You'd have to make a request
Okay,
of the city council. They'll send a letter from the Historic Preservation Commission.
okay. And then would we be free to decide amongst ourselves if we want to become involved, or do we need to go to the city before that? We could do that ourselves?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, you can.
Okay. I mean, do you see this as something that would fit in with our mission and in the annual report that we submit?
I think it would be, a good way to reach out to the community and promote preservation. Yeah, I think it would fit in with your work plan.
I'm sorry, it was unclear. Is there funding available for this? Or if not, how would we go about getting it?
Yeah, you would have to make a request to the city council. There's not funding available specifically for this.
The city doesn't set any funds aside for historical.
Well,
preservation?
there is some funding set aside for education. I mean, you could, it depends on how much you want to contribute toward this. There's $1,750 in the budget for historic preservation.
What does that money usually go for?
It goes for bringing in speakers. It goes for sending people to conferences. If there's, if the commission would decide to, print some brochures for a walking tour or something, it goes for that. Training and education. Yeah. So you could could draw money from that.
So we would need to put an item on the agenda for next meeting? I think
Yes.
I should ask the chair
Yes.
this. Would
Yeah.
we put an item on the agenda for next meeting to vote? Or could we vote tonight on whether we wanted to?
You,
Be on the
you,
committee or not?
in public forum, you can't, it's not on the agenda. So you'd have to put it on the agenda for next time
For next.
to vote.
Okay. So maybe we want to put 2 items on the agenda. 1, do we want to be on the steering committee? And 2, do we want to, 3 items, do we want to provide any funds? And 3, if we do want to provide funds, how much?
And where from?
And where
Our budget already or a special request to the
Exactly.
city council?
And hopefully by that time, we'll have a clearer understanding of some of the budget items there might be. Right now, we're thinking about, marketing materials, maybe banners, signs, publicity, those kinds of things. Downtown Ames did. Travis Tolliver is all in, excited about this, and said that they would be happy to help publicize, but there's many other ways. And also, we've been in contact with Design School at Iowa State, and there's been interest among some faculty and students there to help with some of the design aspects.
So the downtown Ames, have they indicated an interest in providing some financial assistance too?
No. No. But will be a partner, and I would say in-kind contributions.
With the publication?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do we have anyone else who would like to bring something forward?
Greetings. My name is Charles Pearson with Pearson Consulting. I'm an African American historical resource consultant for the state of Iowa. Last week, I had a chance to do a presentation of some different Black experiences associated with the Green Book and just specific Black experiences in Central Iowa. And what I was introducing was letting everybody know that we think that Ames has the best stops, the best sites for people to get the Black experiences in Iowa. Originally, we were looking at Des Moines because we felt like they had a large Black population, but they didn't have the sites. They didn't have the destinations, kind of like how Ames had. So we felt like Ames could be like a big brother to the state capital. The other thing that we were working with Prairie Rivers. They have Lincoln Highway, and they also oversee Jefferson Highway. So we already have a partnership with the African American Museum of Iowa in the city of Cedar Rapids. So we were looking at how do we partner with the city of Ames or Iowa State University. So a location like Tri-Stadium and all the destinations in between Ames and Cedar Rapids could be like a driving tour. The other part that we like was the fact that this Preservation Commission, I also want to say the Historical Society did a great job of, I want to say, interpreting the Black history of their Main Street or being inclusive with their Main Street district. So to be able to have a driving tour from Cedar Rapids to Ames, but also have a walking tour, kind of similar to what the young lady was just saying here, of Black experiences, it would be the first of its kind in the state of Iowa. I think the biggest problem that we had, though, you guys don't have like a Black population like Waterloo, Des Moines, Cedar Rapids. So to get more African Americans on board, we were kind of looking at how many Black property owners maybe have properties that are at least like 50 years old. So when it comes to like you guys' guidelines, possibly inviting them to see if their property can qualify for the National Register. And the reason why we started thinking like that, because the Martin home, I think it's like locally designated. It's not actually on the National Register. And so what our goals is see if we can actually get some properties on the National Register. And when it comes to the Martin home, one of our concerns was, is it safe to take tourists to visit the Martin home? And the group that I took on that actual tour, the majority of them said they didn't think it was safe because it's like a commercial district.
Yeah.
And it's not like a neighborhood district. The other thing that we saw, they had like some type of foundation or organization to work with the Martin family. but it's kind of been inactive for a while. And so for us to use the Martin home, it was kind of risky, really, especially when people come to visit. So we were going to see if maybe we could sit with the commission down the road and maybe even sit with the council and see if there were some new ideas for the Martin House. Because depending on, I don't know if somebody was saying that they might be thinking about knocking it down. I'm not sure if that was a consideration. But when it comes to the significance of the Martin House, it contributes to the sites that Iowa State has too. So between the Main Street District, between the Martin Home, Lincoln Highway, Jefferson Highway, that project is another driving tour that's going to introduce you to the redlining district, or I can't think of the actual neighborhood. I want to say it was Center Street. And so Jefferson can connect tourists to Des Moines and learn about their Center Street district, while we're looking at also Lincoln Highway, not just connecting people to the museum and Tri-Stadium, but they have some unique Black history at the Indian reservation. So Tama has like this history of Black natives that they've never shared with people. They have some sites, they have a school, that type of thing. And so when it came to this preservation commission, I'm not sure if y'all ever had any African Americans actually on the commission before, but I felt like because I'm like all in with this commission, I know Ray, he kind of sold me that if there was room for me in this project, so when it comes to educating the public about what we're doing on our end, and when it comes to the guidelines and some of the goals of the commission on your end, we could all meet. And I think even the bigger thing is when it comes to travel and tourism opportunities, Tri-Stadium won't be like the standalone tourist attraction. You'll have a package of destinations when it comes to Ames, Iowa. And the reason why I like Ames is when you look at the history of it being a land grant site, Iowa State being a land grant institution. People need to know that in 1890, I want to say his name was Muller or something like that. He actually started historical Black colleges in 1890. But for some reason, Iowa never had a chance to have a historical Black college, even though we were at the top of the food chain. So on my end, what I would love to do is see if the commission, how would they feel, or let's say even the mayor, how would they feel about me sitting with you guys and work on this project and some of the things I might not know about the commission or guidelines, because every city has different guidelines, right? All the guidelines aren't the same. I have to kind of look through what you guys have. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's any other city in Iowa that can compete with the things you guys achieved as a city, as a community, as a university, when it comes to just experiences as a whole. Just like the young lady was just saying, she took it on a whole nother level, but I agree with her 100%. But the difference is I focus specifically on Black history, but I'm very inclusive with all the other stories that go with it. So that's my pitch right there.
So what exactly do you want us to do?
I think when it comes to the Historical Preservation Commission, if there's any properties that might have been missed, so instead of just the Martin home, I had a conversation with Mrs. Rollins and Gloria, and there's some other Black legends here that own property that might qualify for the National Register. But the way I was listening, a lot of these people never heard of historical preservation. They've never heard of the Certified Local Government Program. So it's almost like reintroducing them to preservation, and then depending on their property, if it could be locally designated, if it could be put on the National Register, that's something that we could do together as a community to see if we could help them if they properly qualify.
So what you're looking really for is information on other Black-owned properties in the city that might still be able to be called.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because when it comes to the National Register, what we're doing is saying, okay, when it comes to local designation, or when it comes to the qualifying for the National Register, Ames has its own way of doing things. And so we have to make sure that when we talk to the property owner, that they understand how you guys do things. And then on the state level, a lot of things has changed on the state level when it comes to historical preservation. So we got to see where they might fit in on that end. So it's like a learning curve right now because we don't know what the properties that possibly could be listed. I know somebody was telling me about when it comes to the history of the civil rights movement in Ames, there's some properties in like this historical neighborhood. I don't know the name of it, but they said there's a lot of opportunity to list more properties and maybe even create a new list. It might be like a separate list we create. So when it comes to other African-American properties, there's like a blueprint that everybody can use.
Well, I think your presentation is timely because we have talked about finding out more about the history of whether or not there was any underground railroad sites in Ames or the area, and things like that. So I think, that we've already kind of started to talk about something similar. So I think it sounds like a good match.
Have you talked to the Ames History Museum yet?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I did a presentation, I think last Friday or the Friday before, and everybody there is ready to go, right? The problem is they don't have the relationship with the city, and we just created a partnership with Prairie Rivers. So Prairie Rivers is going to be a big brother when it comes to the driving tour, but anything to do with walkability or bikeability, that's something that between, I want to say, the Preservation Commission, community planning, and probably Parks and Rec would also be kind of piggybacking off of what we're doing. I think for you guys, it's basically helping with the listing. So when it comes to the listing of the properties, I think the Preservation Commission could, because that solidifies, that the stories are right. But bigger than that, that also gives you credit when it comes to these projects that we plan on doing. We don't want to leave nobody out. And I think when it comes to connecting people to destinations, and in this case, properties, you guys are the only one. I told Ray that a while ago. I think the city of Ames is the only city that has a listing or at least identified African-American historical resources or stories. And so the things that you guys have done could be an asset for other communities throughout the state.
So you really want our help in maybe helping you put together and certainly reviewing and trying to approve properties to get on the register, either the local register or the national register.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. If we're able to at least identify them, what that does, it automatically can turn into a tourism initiative. So we don't really have to worry about if the property's on the register or not. It's the fact that we can connect tourists and residents alike to the sites. But the prize is if some of those properties do qualify for local designation or the register, you guys are ahead of the bar. And at the same time, if the public wants to know more about how to get involved or what it takes to nominate their property, I could say I actually have a relationship with the Preservation Commission.
I wonder, I remember William saying that he had a connection to someone at maybe SHPA
SHPO.
that might have some information. So I wonder, are we still able to, do we have any contact information for William Ray so that we could reach him? Well, we can always contact him through SHPO.
So what would the next step be? I don't know what we do next.
You know what? I gotta meet with Cassandra with the Human Rights Commission. I'm gonna speak briefly because the other part is the mayor plays a big role in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested with the mayor giving me the green light to work with you guys specifically on that project. And so I think the council, the mayor, city manager, all of them have to be engaged in what we're talking about. But I think the big thing is a lot of the work has already been done. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just got to make sure they understand The big picture is when it comes to tourists and visitors to the city of Ames, they have this extra incentive when it comes to tourism opportunity. And in this case, Tri-Stadium is already the main attraction, but there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to come down to downtown Main Street, Lincoln Highway, this historical neighborhood over here to get more experiences. I think the stuff that I'm talking about, the stuff that the ladies is talking about, I think it's just a huge bonus for the city. But I think even bigger when it comes to the Black residents of Ames, they'll be introduced to something different, right? They're not used to talking about preservation, the certified local government program, architecture and design of buildings. So we're going to take a little, and that's something I could do, but we had to take time out to teach them and try to make them partners in preservation. And on my end, I know preservation inside out, right? I could talk that language all day. But the thing is, you also have to have the volunteers and you have to have the community support on a lot of the projects that you do. And so,
Have you talked to anyone at Iowa State about George Washington Carver?
oh yeah, Iowa State's upset with me because I feel as if they altered history. That's just me personally. I think when it comes to Carver's story, a lot got left out. I think when it comes to Trice's story, a lot got left out. I don't think Iowa State is inclusive to partnering with the city to tell the other stories. You can't have Jack Trice live in downtown Ames and don't tell tourists and residents alike that he lived in downtown Ames. There was a time when Carver first came to Iowa State, he was starving. He didn't have a roof over his head. It took a friend, this young lady, to actually bring awareness to Iowa State University. Bigger than that, when you look at Iowa State being a land grant institution, you can start with 1862 or you can start with 1890. Iowa State broke a lot of rules when it comes to the guidelines of the land grant institution. It was the citizens of Ames that took up the slack that Iowa State left behind. So I think in this case, Iowa State would kind of follow our lead. I haven't went to Iowa State yet because they have their own attractions and they already established how they want people to be connected to their stories. But in this case, it's all about the community, this community right here. It's not about, who the other partners are going to be. It's about, can we tell these experiences? I think the city made a airport, named it after a Black person. There's no other airports in Iowa named after African American. You have the largest Black stadium in the United States. You have a Main Street district that has plaques on the wall that recognize these great people. But after you leave Ames, other people aren't aware of these stories. They're not connected to these stories. And especially the Ames community is not really connected to these stories. You got a high school gym named after a Black basketball player. So the city has already kind of did its part. I just don't think the city understands the markability of some of the things that they've done with Black history in Ames and people like myself that would like to spend a lot of money to see these places.
All right, well, thank you very much for your information.
Okay, thank you. And I'll keep in contact and I'll probably email everybody just so that way y'all have my information.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other presenters for the public forum? If not, we'll move on to item 5, the consideration of certificate of appropriateness for the alteration of the chimney on the exterior of a structure at 809 Burnett.
Yes, at your last meeting, you considered removal of this chimney at 809 Burnett. It is a historic structure in the Old Town Historic District. It's in the category of contributing structures, which are subject to the design guidelines and historic preservation code. And there are design guidelines for chimneys in the code that you reviewed at that meeting and determined that it did not meet those design guidelines to remove the chimney. The applicant wanted to remove the chimney down to below the attic floor so they could remodel the attic for living space. And the commission denied the request for a certificate of appropriateness. So this evening, the applicant's back with a new certificate of appropriateness and proposing to still remove the chimney, but to replace it with a structure. It would not be a functional chimney. It would be a, say, describe it, a faux chimney where it's constructed of wood, and then the exterior of it would be covered with this brick material. It's not a full brick. It's a thin brick, and that would be what you would see on the exterior of the chimney as it projected above the roof line. They're also proposing that the height of the chimney be reduced by 22 inches because of the concern for wind and how that might create a hazard with the wind blowing against the chimney now that would be constructed of wood instead of brick. They have provided a floor plan of the attic, and they show a bathroom area over here. This is the chimney projecting through the floor of the attic and on up through the roof. And here's the staircase. Obviously you can't move the staircase, but they like to remove that chimney so they have more flexibility in how they lay out the space. There, I believe it's going to be a bedroom upstairs there in the attic. But as staff and as a commission, we have to look at the design guidelines. Put those up here again for chimneys. And it says existing, it's down here. Existing brick or stone chimney shall be retained whenever possible. And building and fire codes shall be met in regard to proper heights and other requirements. And then the third one is chimney alterations shall be consistent with the architectural style. With regard to the style, put that photograph of the existing chimney back up on the screen here. You can see it's got some detail up here at the top. Parts of it project out more than others. And what the applicant is proposing is it would not have that level of detail. It would be like so. So there's not really any at the top. There's no parts that project out to, add that architectural character that the current one has. So going back to the design guidelines, it was staff's recommendation on the previous application that it be denied, and we haven't changed our recommendation for this one. Since it does do away with the existing chimney, and the alterations are not consistent with the architectural style. But the main one that we're looking at is it does not retain that existing historic chimney structure. So our recommendation as staff is for denial, and the applicant is here as well, and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
With respect to the style,
Mhm.
Are you talking about the top detail only or also the height?
Probably both.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because it was built at at a different height than what they're proposing now. I think all those elements play into, what is the original architectural feature. So I think it would include the height and the detail both.
Okay. Does the city have a problem with the materials?
Yes.
Okay, the thin brick and the wood?
Yeah, well, we have a problem with, we don't even really get that far to the new material. It's removal of the existing historic chimney. But yeah, they are, attempting to use a material. I don't know if it's really even brick, if it's what it's composed of actually, but it looks like brick, but they say in their application that, they want to have the color as close as possible to the existing chimney, which is good, but the historic chimney is not being retained.
When we met last time, I felt like removing the chimney entirely and having nothing on the roof was inconsistent with the guidance from the city. But at this point, I've looked around Old Town a lot. And I, in fact, live in a Queen Anne house. And there's no chimney on my roof. And there are no chimneys on lots of roofs in Old Town. And I feel like we need to try to meet, we need to try to use the standards in a way that is consistent with the guidance, but also allows people to live in their homes and use their homes as homes and not be frozen in time. And I appreciate the desire to have a taller chimney, but the roof structure won't support a chimney that's as heavy and tall as I think the original, and also withstand the wind loads that are expected.
That could be.
Yeah. So I appreciate the need to shorten the profile to reduce the risk, another derecho or whatever, of that faux chimney structure toppling over. I've used brick veneer in other construction projects, and I have really no objection to that material at all. So I feel like the owner has tried very hard to meet the intent of the regulations, but also make the home a livable place. And if we want people to live in historic structures, I think we have to try to meet them where they are and enable that to happen. So I am in favor of this at this point.
I'd just like to add that this afternoon I went on the internet and looked up Queen Anne homes and their images, thousands of them. The mansions all have very ornate chimneys, like the Mason really wanted to make a statement. But there were many residential type homes that had no detail at the top of the chimney. So it's just a straight chimney with a normal cap on it, but none of these layers type of thing. So I don't think that would be a problem for me if it were just straight up. Although it wouldn't be hard, I don't think, just to have maybe one detail added. Even with the veneer, I think that could probably be done. And also with the veneer, you're not going to be within 50 feet of it. And if they get the right mortar and a little bit of aging, I really don't think that would be a visual problem at all.
Any other comments?
I agree with Bob and Kate, their comments. I think that this is especially what we were talking about last time, that this is a good effort towards compromise, still meeting the spirit of the history of the home, but recognizing that that not all homes in the area even have chimneys like this. And especially in a neighborhood with some dual family residences that are maybe not quite as ornate. So I would also support the homeowner's motion or request. An architectural perspective.
What is the current, do you know what the current height is? About 56 inches
It's
on the long side, I guess?
on the tall side, it's closer to 60.
60,
inches.
okay.
Wow.
And then on the shorter side, where the peak of the roof is at, it's closer to about 48. Again, rough estimates based off of assumed brick size and that type of stuff. So, we'd keep the same overall, dimensions. It'd be 22 inches by 22 inches, so it'd match the same footprint. The material is a polyurethane, so it would have more durability than just bricks. So there wouldn't actually be any mortar involved, and that would kind of make it a little more challenging to have that detail at the top, because you'd have to try to maneuver around. You'd have to add layers of wood and then try to cut that urethane. It just adds another level of complexity to it and more seams to have to deal with. So
Do you anticipate building the chimney on the ground and then moving it up or doing?
that would be my anticipation.
Mhm.
And then just kind of attaching it up there. I'm not sure how the contractor would do that at that point. But
So the brick veneer is glued or whatever
it
right
would be
to the
glued
plywood?
onto the plywood, yeah.
Okay. Couldn't the mortar lines be textured or something or dyed and?
I'm not sure. I think it's just kind of there's specific unit pieces.
Mhm.
And there's a specific corner piece that played into part of the dimensions, because the corner piece is 22 inches. And then there's separate 11-inch high components that tap into that.
Mhm.
So, and then playing into the wind factor, even the blizzard that came through last week, there were shingles that blew off from the property next to us. So that type of situation, trying to balance weight versus wind shear and roof support and that type of thing, trying to keep weight at a minimum, but also, manage kind of the overall height of that as well. So
Is the product such that you could paint the mortar lines?
I didn't necessarily dig into it that deep, but I think the mortar lines are kind of already a component of the material of the veneer. There isn't necessarily stuff that's applied to it after the fact.
So it would show a mortar line.
Yeah.
So the picture here, is it on that kind of a background, the lighter background? So
Yeah,
it looks like,
kind of a gray background, so it would look like the mortar that would
Okay.
typically be there.
okay, all right.
But then they just interlock. Obviously, you can cut it as necessary, but
And it has corners pieces.
there are corner pieces that would fit around that specifically to try to minimize seams. And
Well, if there are any other comments, Ray, would the commission be able to vote tonight? Because this is the second time this has been brought up to us.
Yeah, it's a separate application. He submitted a new certificate of appropriateness. You can vote tonight, yeah.
Okay. Well, my personal opinion would be, I'm in favor of supporting the homeowner. The homeowner is making every attempt he can to try and comply. And I agree that the houses to be 21st century or livable, and maintain family presence in the old town. If we're going to err, let's err on the side of the property owner. So, I guess with that said, if there's a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness for, it's at 8:09.
Right, Burnett.
Burnett.
I move to approve the certificate of appropriateness for 809 Burnett.
Oh,
Is there a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I think the motion passes. Purple up there. Okay, the next item is number 6. Consideration of exterior changes to the property located at 702 Clark Avenue related to the proposed special use permit and subject to approval by the zoning board of adjustment. I see, because this is my first time serving in this position, under public forum, the chairperson may limit each speaker to 5 minutes. Is that also, Ray, something we can do?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we'll time these comments. They'll be limited to 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll start with the presentation here. This is not an official site plan, but this is a simplified site plan, showing you some of the bird's eye view of plan view of some of the changes that are proposed. This is the house here. This is the rear entrance, and they are proposing a small deck here, approximately 8 feet by 8 feet, replacing the back door. It is a metal clad door, and widening the door opening by 4 inches, and then constructing the deck, which we'll get into a little bit more later. And then there's a gravel parking space here. They're proposing to pave it, but there's no action needed by the commission for that. That would be up to the zoning board of adjustment. But the reason this is before you is not for approval of certificates of appropriateness for the door and the deck, but rather the planning director has determined that due to the proposed exterior changes that affect a contributing structure within the historic district, the Historic Preservation Commission must consider the proposal related to those changes and make comments or recommendations, if any, to the zoning board of adjustment. And then the zoning board of adjustment has the authority for approval of the special use permit, which we have received. A special use permit application is what we received, and it is to approve the use of this structure as a social service by a social service provider. And so that would be the next step, going to the zoning board of adjustment. But tonight, you're not being asked to approve or deny the changes to the exterior, because those are actually alterations that are approved by staff instead of the commission. But we also will wait on that approval until it goes to the zoning board of adjustment to approve those certificates of appropriateness and make any changes as determined by the zoning board. But you have an opportunity tonight to give them your comments and your recommendations on those items, the deck and the door.
Ray, I'm confused.
Yeah.
Are we discussing the alteration to the building?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not part of the special use permit.
Well, it will be in the packet with the zoning board of adjustment for them. Yes, they will look at those. They will.
The special use permit will also provide approval to the,
No, it's staff will approve the the certificate of appropriateness, but the board will review it. And they are, they
So,
have the authority to, change things as well.
so are we commenting
If
on,
something needs to be changed according to the standards they use.
so are we being asked for opinions on the modifications to the facility that we're being asked about?
Yeah, you're being asked for your comments and recommendations to the zoning board of adjustment on the exterior changes that are proposed with the door and the deck. So you still have a question?
I'm not sure, but go ahead.
Okay, all right. This is a rendering of what the deck would look like, what's proposed. We do have some comments as staff as to some changes that we think are necessary to meet the design guidelines, but it shows the door here, and actually it shows two little windows. It's a larger pane of glass in about the top half of the door.
Mhm.
And that doorway would be 4 inches wider than it is now. It's 32 inches. It would be 36. And then the deck is approximately 8 by 8. And to meet the design guidelines, it needs to be constructed in such a way that it's not attached to the house itself, that it's independent of that, so that it would need to be, I believe, changed from what they show there. Here's a more of a sketch of what it would look like, the deck and the steps. And they're proposing, the wood construction, and then they have to either paint it or stain it. And then they have to have either a lattice or some kind of screening to match the foundation under the deck, between the floor of the deck and the ground. And then there's some building code things with handrails that they have to meet, but the modifications that they would need to make to meet the design guidelines would be minor in nature.
I have a question. Is there no requirement for a ramp so that it would be wheelchair accessible?
There is not a requirement for a ramp. No, there is not.
Is there a ramp to the other entrances of the house then?
There is not. No, there's not a requirement for a ramp. According to building inspections and with the building code.
I guess what I'm confused is I've seen the special use permit application, and I didn't see any of this discussed in that special use permit application. So I'm a little confused about how this fits all together.
Well,
Yes.
we are still figuring it out too. We're still figuring it out too. We don't have all the answers. But we think it's important for the board to have all the information. So we have 2 certificates of appropriateness, that makes physical changes to the exterior of the structure. We think they should be aware of that. And if it impacts any of the criteria that they use to approve or deny the special use permit. But yes, you're right. It's not actually technically part of the special use permit application. There's these 2 other applications for certificates of appropriateness. So, but it's physical changes to the property. So,
Well, so we're not commenting on a certificate of appropriateness, and we've missed I mean, we're not in the special use permit business. So I don't quite understand what the purpose of this entire discussion is.
Well, it says, in the code here, just a second.
It says in the code, in chapter 31, that we're supposed to review proposed zoning amendments, and we didn't do that. And we're supposed to review zoning ordinances changes, and we didn't do that. So I don't see where this situation is anywhere in the code. I don't understand the situation, quite frankly.
Okay. Okay, it's back to this. Under number 2, with regard to zoning applications and proposed zoning ordinance amendments, you have a zoning application here that affects the proposed or designated landmark in historic districts. It's an historic structure in the historic district. The Historic Preservation Commission shall consider such application. That's what you're doing. You're considering the application. And you're considering the exterior improvements because that is
But the
one of
zoning
your roles.
application is passed, right?
The what?
The change in zoning happened. That's done. And that didn't come to us, remember?
Yes, I know, but this is a change to the exterior of the structure, which you have
But it's not,
authority.
but it's not a zoning application.
It is a zoning application.
It's a special use permit.
It is a zoning application for the certificate of appropriateness. It's in the historic preservation overlay.
I realize it's in the historic preservation
Yeah.
overlay.
Yeah,
But the applicant is asking for a special use permit.
yes, they
And I
are.
don't see that a special use permit is a zoning application. People get special use permits all the time, but they're not zoning applications.
Well, you're not being asked to comment or make recommendations on the special use permit. You're being asked to make comments or recommendations on the physical changes to the exterior of the structure.
But that's not what this says. This says that we make comments on zoning applications and proposed zoning ordinance amendments, not adjustments to people's houses.
Well,
That's not what
we would
paragraph 2
we'd
says.
disagree with you.
Well, let's get straight to the conversation later tonight about powers and duties of the HPC, I guess.
So if you have no comments or recommendations, that's fine. But if you have comments or recommendations about the deck and the door that you want to pass along to the zoning board of adjustment, tonight's your opportunity to do that.
Would the door be painted consistent with the color scheme of the house then? Or
Well,
would it stay white like the current door is? Or
you can make whatever comments you want. There's no design guidelines and you're not approving a certificate of appropriateness, but I'm just giving you this information that there's no design guidelines on paint color. But I mean, if you want to say something to them about paint color, you can do that.
The other question I had is attachment B, it talks about needing more accessibility to enter into the home. And I see the floor plan has an ADA bathroom and wheelchair space. But I guess I don't understand that if there's no ramp.
There's no ramp required. And the widening of the door is,
Right,
is,
for accessibility.
yeah, it's for accessibility, but it's also for this type of use.
Yeah, yeah, and I understand that. I'm just kind of curious about,
Yeah.
how a wheelchair would even get up there then if there's no
Mm.
ramp
Mhm.
at the entrance for the wider door for a wheelchair. So that's just my comment.
The facility isn't required to meet ADA, is that correct?
I'm sorry,
The facility is not required to meet ADA requirements, is that correct?
the city doesn't enforce ADA.
Well, enforcing and requiring are two different things. So whether the city enforces it or not is not the question. The question is whether the facility is required, since it's, quasi-open to the public, to be an ADA compliant facility.
Well, you'd have to ask building inspections that question. Because that would be something they'd look at for the building permit. But ADA is not something that the city enforces.
What about the style of the railing? Is that
I'm sorry?
consistent? The style of the railing, is that consistent with the period of the house?
I guess we should ask Ray. Ray, is the railing that's proposed consistent with the style of the house?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's more contemporary than what you'd find
Yeah.
with the historic design.
So I have a question. It looks like the existing door, looking at attachments C and D, it looks like the existing door, it's hard to tell due to the angle, but it looks like the existing door is centered under that awning. Is that generally correct? I don't- Centered underneath this?
I don't know if it is or
Okay.
not.
I guess-
It doesn't
I just-
center to me.
whatever
It
it
looks
shows
like
in the
it's
picture.
closer to, you get the picture on the right, the left than it is the right.
Can't get a good sense of it. Because of the screen door there, the pictures, it's kind of hard to tell. I guess I know we're not approving or anything, but I think my comment would be that to me, it looks like it's centered. And so my question, I guess, is which side of the door is getting widened, or are they both getting widened equally? Which I know that takes a little bit more work, because it looks like the hinge is changing. We're going from the hinge on the left side to the hinge on the right side based on the floor plan, but I think expanding the right jamb would make it look less centered, and that might affect the appearance. So that's just, I think, just something to consider. Again, it's not binding at all, but it's just a comment.
Well, the carpenter and me would tear the whole thing out and put a new header in there. The header is for a 32-inch door. You got to put a header in for a 36-inch opening. And probably the best way to do that is to tear out both sides and rebuild the entire door frame. And if you're tearing out both sides, then it would be centered. And then the restoration person in me would say, okay, the city's probably gonna require a steel door, but you can get a steel door that has like a faux wood stamped finish. So you can have a door that looks period correct, but still would be a steel door because they have to be fire rated.
Mhm.
So that would be
Be a better.
my comment. But I would think that any carpenter would tear out both sides and rebuild it and put a new header in there. And they would center it at the same time. Do we have any other comments? Do we have any comments from the public?
Hi, David Thielen, Executive Director of the Romero House.
5 minutes.
Oh, less than that. You can see by the stoop, it needs to be rebuilt. So the door was mandated by the city. We have no choice. It has to be 4 inches ADA door. Now, like your questions, we thought we'd have to do a ramp too. We don't. But certain conditions of the house are ADA. The door has to be ADA, so we have to replace the door to make it 4 inches wider. Point by Michael Murphy was correct. I think you just rebuild the header and center it from there. Now, the stoop, that was our decision, the 8x8. It's a little bit less than 8x8, but it's close to 8x8 for accessibility for anybody that is handicapped. So they get up the stairs, they maneuver a little bit with their cane, or it could be their scooter. It's not a social deck. I want to be very clear on that. It's not a social deck where you're going to sit down and communicate and socialize and have chairs and all that. It's a small little deck for accessibility only. I saw the minor modifications the city is asking us to do. That's no issue at all. We'll definitely do that. I did speak to the contractor this morning. We can make it self-detached. We can put the lattice or some kind of foundational material to cover the ground to the deck. No issue there at all. Handrails up a little bit higher, no problem. But I think the big thing for us is not having to put that ramp in. That would have been not only difficult for everybody in this room, but difficult for us as well. We want to keep the aesthetic beauty of the home intact. So we're making just the 2 recommendations on the door, which we're mandated to do. And then also on the deck, which we think is a good feature for anybody that wants a little bit of room to maneuver, not to socialize, but to maneuver.
Are you considering making the railing consistent with the period of the house?
If there's something that we can do to do that, I think we could, yes. Absolutely. And the staining and the color, we haven't determined that yet, but obviously we'd do it to make it aesthetically pleasing. If there's a guideline by the city on what we should do there, we're open to it. But we want to keep the house uniform as much as possible with the history.
Is the deck designed such that you could in the future add a ramp if you needed to or wanted to?
Yes, and I asked that question, we could do that. So that's important too, if we're required to do that. And sometimes it's not even the requirement, it's just what's right for the person. So if we can do that, yes. One thing I want to point out is this entrance will be the main entrance to the home. We have a fence surrounding the backyard. Want to keep it very conspicuous as far as traffic and a lot of in and out. So the front door of our house at 702 Clark is going to be limited as far as who can come in. It's staff members only. We only have 1 to 3 staff members in the home. So the entrance, the main entrance, we call it, would be through the back door with a gated backyard. Now, the parking spot that Ray mentioned, it's a gravel spot that's already there. I mean, we don't have to asphalt it, but I think it would look nice. It'd be nice and uniform, especially when we have muddy conditions like we had last week, but it's already there. It's right next to the carriage house. Yeah.
1 minute.
Okay. Any further questions? I think the main point is we want the house to look beautiful. And I know there's some back and forth with the city and the neighborhood, but at the end of the day, we want the house to look beautiful from the outside, functional from the inside. And we plan to do that. It's going to be landscaped beautifully on the outside. So anyway,
I do think there's some lack of trust because the fence that you're putting up is not consistent with the period of the house. So I hope that you take it seriously
We do.
when you talk about things being consistent with the neighborhood, because your fence definitely is not.
Any other questions? Thank you.
This is just a thought about the process. It seems to me, and maybe this is something to go to the planning department, it seems to me that with all of these exterior changes, that before this location was approved, to have, to, go through zoning change and all that sort of thing, it seems like it should have come to the Historic Preservation Commission first. That this, a very significant change to the exterior doorways, we're talking about fences, we're talking about decks, and it does create a different look to the house. So it's not about this anymore. This has already been a decided thing, but in the future, it seems like, I would hope that the planning and zoning would bring these sorts of things to a Historic Preservation Commission first.
The reason why we don't is because in the code, it says alterations are approved by staff. I mean, we can decide to bring it to the commission, but the reason that was put in there to kind of, make it a more efficient process for the homeowners on things that didn't necessarily have to come to the commission. So, so to do what Shelley is suggesting would take a change in the code to require that the alterations that are proposed, that they would have to come to the commission instead of be approved by staff. It would take that change in the code.
I'm sorry, I just didn't finish what I was going to say. And that was, we just sat through, I was here last time when we spent a lot of time talking about a chimney that had much less significance to the exterior appearance than what is the action that's being taken here. And that individual had to come in front of the HPC. So somehow it seems like, I know it's what is in the code, I recognize that, but it seems that, I'm just saying that it would be something that would be more consistent with common sense.
Everything used to come to the commission. All the alterations used to come to the commission. And then we had a lot of complaints from homeowners in the district that didn't want everything to come to the commission, that wanted, a more efficient, rapid approval on minor things. So it was determined when the code was changed back in 2015 that the alterations could be approved by staff. It was to, make it more efficient, make it more user-friendly. That's why it was done. So if everything goes back to the commission again, it will take longer because there's deadlines for review and submittal of the application and so forth.
So the staff considers minor alterations.
No alterations, period. If it doesn't increase the floor area, it's under the approval by staff.
So we only consider alterations related to what?
You don't consider alterations unless what's submitted to staff, we can't approve it the way it is, then the applicant can take it to the commission, or we as staff can say, we would like the input from the commission on this because this is really kind of, unusual, maybe not anticipated by the code language, and have it bring it to the commission. But if it's if it's siding, windows, doors, that type of thing, it is approved by staff.
But we're hearing this tonight. I mean, we are hearing this. After all that, we're still hearing this thing, which isn't even included in the special use permit. So I'm still unclear. I guess we'll talk about this later. All right.
Yeah, well,
Seems more relevant to
we're
number
still
7.
figuring it out too, just exactly what needs to go to the zoning board of adjustment. I don't know that we've run across this situation before. So it's new to us too.
Are there any other comments or presenters for item 6 on the agenda? If not, we'll move on to the item 7, nominations for Historic Preservation Awards.
Before you do that, so there's no comments or recommendations that you're officially passing on to the,
Well, did you take down the comments that we gave
well,
individually?
you'd really need to vote on it to pass them on. Because individual comments are individual comments. As a commission, what we're looking for is the commission comments.
Okay, how about this? I'll make a
Yeah.
motion.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we recommend the approving body to require the back door to be centered under the porch overhang. That we suggest requiring the deck and the railing to be of a style consistent with the period of the home. We consider the door to have a faux wood finish. I think those are the 3 things we discussed. Is that right?
Well, faux wood or
Faux wood or-
paint consistent with the period appropriate paint
Okay.
color or scheme.
Anybody want to second that?
I'll second.
Any other comments? If not, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So those recommendations will be passed on then to planning and zoning, or Ray will take care of it. Any other items here under number 6 that we've missed? If not, we'll move on to the nominations for the Historic Preservation Award. So in our agenda items that we received, there's a nomination. I'm not familiar with this individual. Jason Detzenbach.
Dietzenbach. Mhm.
And it's for the Ames Historical Society. Is that correct?
Ames History Museum.
Well, it says Historical Society is a property owner.
Oh, yes. Yes, it does. Okay. The building is, what they call it there. I mean, I agree with you that it says property owner Ames Historical Society. They call it the Ames History Museum. So the Ames Pantorium is the light blonde tile building that now is owned by either the Ames Historical Society or the Ames History Museum. I don't know which. And is part of the building, the brown brick building next to it. And they have recently completed a lot of interior changes to incorporate the Ames Pantorium as part of the Ames History Museum. And I believe they had several pictures in the application that showed the changes they made on the interior. But, at the same time, they have preserved the historic look of the outside of the building, including the neon sign that they have. And so they provided a narrative and they provided historic photos in the application showing the exterior, and they provided photos of the interior showing the changes that they've made. And they're asking that it be considered as renewing the past, that category for a building award. And as you look at the Historic Preservation Awards nomination form, that category says rehabilitation, acknowledges the need to alter or add to an historic property to meet continuing and changing uses while preserving those portions or features which convey a building's historical, cultural, or architectural values. Rehabilitation encourages the continued use of a building for its original purpose or its adaptive reuse to accommodate a new function. So that's the category they believe they fit best into, and the commission can go with that category or go with another category. You can vote to give them a historic preservation award, or you can vote not to. And then there's two other applications we've received besides that.
Are we only awarding, making one award?
No, no, you can
We
have,
could award all three? We could
Yeah.
award two or one or none?
yeah, no, it's not limited to one.
So are we actually making the award this evening, or we're just?
No, you're
we're
just
voting to accept?
voting that they will receive an award. And then the way it works is the mayor and the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission at the second council meeting in April will present them with a plaque that is an award, and talk about, the project and what they've done, and, provide recognition for what they've done for preservation with this project.
We're voting tonight to approve them. To get
Yeah, to approve it for an award. Yep. Mhm. And then the award will be given in April.
Has everybody seen the new renovations at the museum? It's striking. It's very, very nice.
It's great.
And I remember when moved to Ames over 40 years ago, walking downtown, I remember this sign because I chuckled. What is this?
What's the Pantorium? Who knew it was a museum?
So I'm glad they kept it. I wonder, has it ever been lighted or with neon or anything?
It does light,
It does light.
It's out of, it won't, the application said it's not functional right now.
isn't it? Okay.
But it has since I've lived here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I make a motion?
You certainly may.
I move that we approve this submission for award.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made to accept the petition and award for historic preservation. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Ray, you said there were some other applications.
Two others,
Do we have those?
you should, with your packet.
911 Burnett.
Yeah, 911 Burnett and 928 Burnett. You want to talk about 911 Burnett first? This is 911 Burnett. This application was submitted under the category of keeping the past alive. And what that says,
It's in this stuff.
is preservation focuses on the maintenance and repair of existing historic materials and retention of a property's form as it has evolved over time, keeping a historic building, one that has survived without detrimental changes or deterioration, in good condition by sustaining the existing form, integrity, and materials of an historic property. So that's the category they have requested that the award be given under. They feel that the applicant feels like that's the appropriate category.
I think this building's kind of remarkable because of the stucco. It's really hard to maintain stucco, and for a house that old that's got stucco that they've maintained, which has got to have taken a ton of work, and really a search for craftsmen, I think that is really a gem of a building.
I agree. And then I also note that the application or the nomination indicates that the inside woodwork and floors has been maintained.
Can I ask a clarifying question? For these different award categories, is there, like, it seems like for maybe number 1 and 2, there might be some sort of like active occurrence of a rehabilitation or a restoration. Like we did just see that, the Ames Pantorum building was rehabilitated as part of that whole renovation with the History Museum. And I could see how that could be similar with number 2. And so when you have things like that, that might be a good like instigator for like, oh, hey, they did this, so let's give them an award. That makes sense. For this preservation award, is there a similar understanding for that, or is that just like ongoing, like they're doing a great job kind of thing? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like we don't necessarily, you don't necessarily need an event of, hey, they repointed their brick, for example, to say, hey, they're doing a good job. We could just recognize that, hey, you're on a day-to-day.
The commission, I mean, historically, what the awards have been given for are, projects that,
Right.
they did. In addition, they did porch, they did some project, not within the last 3 years.
Okay.
Not necessarily just maintenance, but so this would be something new that the commission.
I think this is a good idea
done.
because I think if we're trying to encourage people to just hold on to what they've got and recognize the great gems that are in the community, in our communities, I think recognizing a homeowner like this who's clearly putting a lot of effort into their home is a good idea. That's my personal opinion.
I would agree with that because there's a lot to maintaining an older home and maintaining the integrity of the original. It's not necessarily always a big project that you take on at one time. It's an ongoing thing. So if there are no other comments, I'll move to approve the nomination.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So we are voting on the proposal for, or the motion to approve the second nomination for an award. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
The other one is 928 Burnett, same category, submitted by the same person.
It's a nice looking house.
If you don't know off the top of your head what that house is, it has remarkable windows. It has many of the original windows and their mullions and everything, and it's just beautifully maintained, and it's really architecturally striking when you go by that house. It jumps right out at you. Plus, it's got a great color scheme.
You know what I say? No chimney.
Yes, you're right. Great eyes.
You can't see it from the front. It's in back.
Oh, yeah. Shh, you should have kept quiet.
Must not be regulation because a chimney is supposed to be higher than the highest peak of the house.
I move for 928 Burnett, I think that's it, 928, to receive an award for keeping the past alive.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, for agenda item 7, we had 3 nominations, 3 approvals. Is there anything else, Ray?
Nope.
We'll move on then to agenda item number 8, powers and duties of the Historical Preservation Commission.
I don't want to make a big deal out of this. I think I prompted this to get on the agenda, and I'm not trying to make everybody's life hard, but I am increasingly a little confused about what the city expects of this. I'm still confused about the exact logic of why we commented on the 702 Clark property. But from a larger perspective, in chapter 31, section 6, it kind of says 2 things we're supposed to do that we haven't been included in recently. One of them is to review proposed zoning amendments that affect proposed or designated landmarks and historic districts. That's number 7. And number 9, that says to periodically review the zoning ordinance and to recommend to the P&Z and the council any amendments appropriate. Wait, is that the right one? No, that's the right one. Yeah, because, zoning ordinance. So there were proposed zoning ordinances that we weren't involved in. And tonight, we were asked to comment on changes to a building, although Ray told us normally we wouldn't comment on those things because it's part of because the property is going to get a special use permit or going to go up for a special use permit, which none of those changes have been mentioned in the special use permit, and we're not commenting on the special use permit. So the whole thing is confusing to me. Now, maybe it's clear to y'all and you can explain it to me, but it's not really clear to me what we do and what we don't do. And I'm not trying to open up a Pandora's box. I honestly am not.
Any other comments? I think it was at the last meeting, you had made comments about sometimes there are conflicting policies, guidelines. And I wonder if we should, at some point, have a committee meeting or develop a committee where you and maybe someone else in our group would sit down with like the city attorney and go through and look at a couple of these and ask, do we have a conflict or conflicting statements on what our positions are, what our responsibilities are. But for us to do it at a open meeting like this would be virtually impossible, and without, the city attorney here, I don't know how you would do it. And it might be a lengthy process. This could be something that the committee members and the attorney, it might take you a couple hours to go through it.
I agree.
And I don't want to do it.
Well, Bob and I are kind of cut out for that kind of thing. I'd volunteer to meet with the city attorney if they're willing, if he's willing,
Well, what,
just to discuss whether or not there's any conflict between chapters and see how to maybe possibly clarify some of the concerns that we've had.
Because the HPC has responsibilities in both 29 and 30, chapters 29 and chapters 31. And they use words like use and effects, which we discussed before, have varying meanings to different people. So, you know, if Bob and Devon were to meet with the city attorney and get some guidance on, to clarify, hey, these are the places where HPC's mentioned, here's what this means, and here's what these words mean, that might be really useful.
I'm willing to do that.
And then I would think you would come back and say, okay, well, we found that we have two conflicting statements here. And this is the city attorney is going to direct us towards this. So then do we need to change the bylaws for the Historical Preservation Committee? And is that something that we do, or is that something that the city council does? And we're not voting on anything tonight other than if we could have a committee, form a committee to sit down with the city attorney to review our role as it's defined. Does that make sense?
well,
Because we think there's some conflicts.
yeah, what's been done in the past, and we provided a couple things in your packet about it, that there was a subcommittee formed. The council was in favor of, looking at the code, making some changes, which was done in 2015. And the process that was used was a subcommittee of the Historic Preservation Commission, and then it involves some other people outside city government. There was more than just the representatives from the commission. There were others from the community, and looking at the code and making recommendations to city council. That was in 2015. So, I mean, that same process could be followed again. But if it involves staff time, we have to have direction from the city council. So you could write a letter to the council to see if they would approve of staff, working on that. But
Steph,
if it's, just the commission, it's in your work plan, you can appoint a subcommittee and work on it and take your recommendations to the council. But if it involves staff time, we have to get approval from the council.
and by staff time, you mean the city attorney too?
Yeah.
At the last city council meeting,
Yep.
a couple of city council city council members grilled the HPC chair pretty hard about what is the HPC doing and why haven't we been involved in all these different things? Why don't we meet every month? And also said, and I understand that there's some concern and confusion about what responsibilities you have, and that needs to get cleared up. And the mayor talked directly to the HPC commissioner or chair at that meeting about, we want to support you and all this kind of stuff. So it seemed to me, if we asked the city if we could get a few hours of staff time to meet with Devon and Bob, there's a likely chance that they'd be sympathetic to that need. I don't think we're envisioning revising Chapter 31 based on this conversation, but it would be useful to get some clarification.
Did we, Sorry, I don't.
No, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I'm trying to remember about maybe around like the first 6 months of my term, we were working on revising portions of Chapter 31.
Mhm.
Did that, and I can't remember if we made recommendations to change, to revise a few things. Was that correct? I can't remember how that ended, or if it did end, or if it's ongoing still, if we are still.
The commission talked about it, but then when I got to the point of involving staff time to put it together, the council said no.
The city council said no? Okay.
They did at the time.
Hmm.
They did not include it in our work program. They had other things they wanted us to work on.
They were asked about it in a formal letter to the council and they said,
Yeah.
"No, that's not
They
our
did.
priorities."
They did. Yep, they did.
So, and that was 10 years ago?
That was about a year ago.
No,
a
that
year
was,
ago. Oh, yeah,
that
I'm sorry.
was more recent. Than that, yeah. 10 years ago, they said yes. And then then the code did change. But more recently, they didn't
They
want, they had other priorities for staff.
Well, maybe since the mayor and the city council members were quite interested in what we do, maybe they'd be more interested now in giving us a little bit of time, a couple of hours.
Can't hurt to ask. The worst thing you
Right.
can say is no.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, that's what you do, send a letter to the city council and ask them.
Is this, is it also possibly a matter of timing? In that, like, I know it was just a couple months ago that we went through and approved our work plan for the year. Is it more likely to get approved? Are we more likely to get work hours from staff approved during that period of time because everybody's setting up their budgets and their own work plans? Does that make sense, that question? Like,
Right? Is it the budget cycle? An important
yeah,
aspect?
yeah, is it,
It's probably more likely if you made the request late summer, early fall, because that's when the budget process is getting going. Now, I mean, they could change the budget. They can decide they want staff to work on that, but they've already been through what they want us to do and what they want to budget for. So, I mean, you can ask anytime, but
so
I don't know how they'll view it.
So we could ask now, but say if it doesn't work out now,
we
maybe
can ask.
in the future, could we do this in the next budget cycle?
Yeah,
And, okay, leave the door open for that.
Yep.
Okay.
And who would we want to meet with? Just the city attorney or someone from planning and zoning? Council?
well, you might put that in your letter, to meet with the appropriate city staff to review this, because probably would involve planning as well.
Mhm.
All right, so do we need to have a motion to send a letter? Or
Yes.
Do we,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
who writes the letter?
the chair.
Oh, good, so we can pass that off to
Well, his last letter was so effective. Maybe
Well,
we can answer
and-
this time.
I mean, that's been the practice in the past, the chair has written a letter.
All right, he's just gone this evening, he's not gone permanently, right?
That'll teach
He
you
says
this
with
meeting, right?
Okay, I'll move. I move that we send a letter to the city requesting their support through staff time to work with a subcommittee of the HPC to clarify HPC roles and responsibilities.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Any other comments with regard to powers and duties of the Historical Preservation Commission? If not, we'll move on to agenda item 9. Any comments?
I have one quick question. To get the issue of, do we want to get a member on the steering committee for the thing that the nice young lady talked about at the beginning? Do we need to vote to get that on the agenda for the next meeting, or what do we need to do?
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay,
Yes, that would
I'm
be
going
good.
to move that we have an agenda item on the next meeting to discuss the
Ames,
Ames, a glimpse inside project, specifically whether we want to have a committee member on their steering committee, whether we want to ask the city for funds, and how much we want to ask for.
I'll second.
I'm writing.
Sorry if I talked too fast.
All right, so we have a motion and second. How's this read?
To have an item on next meeting's agenda.
Agenda item with regard to support
For-
and
Support committee, no, to have an item on the agenda for the next meeting to discuss putting a committee member on the steering committee of the Ames, A Glimpse Inside event. Sorry if I'm making, are you getting this, Laura?
you got that written the way you want it?
Commission member, she meant.
Yeah.
Commission member?
Mhm.
And then to vote on whether we want to ask for funds from the city. And if so, how much?
So that's our motion.
You can change the motion if you want.
All right. Can you read that back? or- So that makes sense.
So I put motion to have an item on the April agenda to discuss putting a commission member on the steering committee for the Ames A Glimpse Inside project and discuss funding availability.
All right, so that's Kate's motion, correct?
Yes.
And my second.
And we have your second. And then we need to vote on that separately.
They just need to do the all in favor.
We're all in favor.
So
Do we have to say,
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
you guys need
So
to do
all
all
in favor of the motion is read by Laura, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
thank you.
Okay, we have item 10, staff comments.
I have no comments.
Laura, do you want to have a comment?
You want to go home?
Well, if there's no other business, we would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
I'll
Is there a
second. I'll
So
second.
we have a motion to adjourn the meeting in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned.